Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 23 of Wellbeing Wednesday, where my colleague Louise and myself, that is Cynthia, chat to an amazing woman from rural, regional and remote Australia and get to hear a bit about her life and a little bit about well-being, because we really want to make sure that during this time of COVID-19, we think that it's even more important to be focusing on well-being. So we're thrilled to have
sound went, Cynthia. Can you hear Cynthia, Sally?
No.
Whoops. If I could read your lips, Cynthia. Try again. Yep, you're back.
We've got you now.
I can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me?
Oh no.
Can you hear me, Tim?
Crap. Louise, can you talk?
All right, I'll talk. So this happened last week, Sally. So we're, as Cynthia said, episode 23, and we'll get into the interview very quickly, Sally. I think we've just about all nutted out Zoom and how that works, and even Nosh has mentioned he's used Kahoot and likes it, so we're getting really great using all this
Hello?
tools. Yes, I can hear you, Cynthia. Can you hear me? Oh no, she can't hear me. So just on the dashboard, you can see the Q&A if you want to ask a question of us and with Sally, and you don't want us to lose it, pop it in there, we'll get to it, or use the chat room with your questions.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, definitely. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Ooh, okay, we're back. What else on the little dashboard there? As you know, we're recording, and if you haven't already, let us know where you're zooming in from, and if you've got questions already on your mind that you want us to address. And yeah, I'm dreaming, Nicole. You miss Magnetic Island. I just miss Melbourne. Not you, Cynthia.
Oh yeah, sorry about that, everyone. I've got a new tech set up here. I've got double screens, I've got microphones, and it just seems to occasionally, I don't know, everything resets and I don't know what's going on. So sorry about that. So I'd like to welcome our speaker today, Sally Dickinson from Goondiwindi. Hello, Sal.
Hi, Sim.
Great to have you here with us today. And so we're going to spend, probably Louise said, about 45 minutes having a bit of a chat, or probably 40 now. And we love having questions from everyone. This session is recorded and it goes on my website for people to tune in later. But Sal, I just wondered if you could start off by giving us a little bit of an intro as to who you are, what you do, where you're located.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sim. And thanks so much for the invitation to have a chat with everyone today. And thank you for all of those people that have given up their time to, get together and have a bit of a chat. And I really appreciate you giving your time to have a listen to me. So thank you very much. So I grew up in a small country town in central Victoria of Tubarak, where my family farm and were involved in the shearing industry. And it was through my love of agriculture and farming and what was familiar to me through those family experiences where I made the decision that I wanted to work in agriculture. So I embarked on my career with the state government in Victoria, working in locations such as Bendigo and Maryborough. And then I went across to the dairy industry at Kyabram. And it was at this time that the millennium drought was occurring in Victoria, which was a terribly dreadful time for a lot of farmers in lots of parts of Victoria and southern New South Wales. And it was at this time then I made a change to work for local government in northern Victoria in sustainability, and it was at that time we were starting to see a bit of a lot of water policy reform, both nationally and in the states as well. With my time in the Department of Ag and the various name changes in Victoria, I worked mostly in natural resource management and sustainable agriculture. Then I had the opportunity to move north, and I took up a regional land care facilitator's role in Moree, and then had the opportunity to work for the cotton industry in an engagement and extension role, which then moved me a little bit further north to the border town of Gundawindi. And then after about 7 years with the cotton industry, working across northern New South Wales and southern Queensland directly with growers and the various industry stakeholders, I was also able to be a part of a number of industry-wide projects, including a role as the chair of WINCOT, the Women in Cotton Industry Network. And then I was able to now work for the Murray-Darling Basin Authority. I've been with them since November 2018, working across the Northern Basin in a stakeholder engagement role. So that's sort of my work history, and that all helps to support my horse habit. And I enjoy the sport of camp drafting outside of work, and helps me to keep in touch with my family in Victoria, who I'm missing dreadfully at the moment, and friends as well, and Susie, who's on the call today, is an old friend as well. So yeah, so that's sort of a bit of my journey. So I sort of find it interesting working for the Murray-Darling Basin Authority now, where I've had that opportunity to work, in southern parts of the basin in Victoria, and now at the top parts of the basin in southern Queensland and northern New South Wales, and the opportunity to work across a couple of different ag industries and NRM as well since. So yeah.
And so just to share also that you're here today in a personal capacity rather than in your role with the Murray-Darling Basin Authority. So yeah, and is there just anything that you want to kind of
Thanks, Cinth. So I'm just wondering if anyone does happen to have any questions about my work with the Murray-Darling Basin Authority or the plan itself. I'm more than happy to take those outside of today's webinar, and I'm able to provide my contact details to Cinth or Louise, and happy for any inquiries or questions to be taken outside of today's webinar on those topics.
Thank you. Thanks, Sal. So just for those of us who may not be in the horse scene, what's camp drafting? Tell us a bit more about that.
It's a wonderful, uniquely Australian horse sport. It originated on the stations in rural Australia, where stockmen wanted to challenge themselves and see who had the best horse. So how competition is conducted now, on your horse, you go into a yard and there'll be a number of cattle in there, and you choose the cow that you'd like to work, and you take it to the front of the yard and block it on your horse to show that you've got control of it. And then you take it outside, and you've got 40 seconds to complete a course, which is in around pegs in like a cloverleaf pattern. So pretty fast and furious, and lots of fun, very, very social. It really helps it's a sport that helps to support rural communities. Whole families compete, and it's a great social outlet. Obviously the drought impacted that sport quite a bit, and COVID as well, but it's a great sport for a lot of rural and regional Australia to enjoy, and it's great seeing whole families there enjoying the sport together. So yeah.
So from your language, Sal, it sounds like family really, I can see, lights you up, and you got a bit excited when you were talking about your horses. Your horses and the getting together in community. It sounds like those things are really important. Have they always been important for your well-being? Tell me more about them and other things that might build your well-being.
Yeah, I think they have, Cinth, and when I looked at some of the questions that you had put to me prior to the webinar today, when I sort of think about what well-being means to me, it really means about, me being my best, whatever my definition of being my best is, and understanding what those things are that I need to be my best. And some of those things, I think it's important to look at it quite holistically. Connection is really important. Food, exercise, growing, giving, accepting, contributing, you know, whatever it is that you need, or the circle that you're a part of, or your community that helps you to be whatever your best, whatever your definition is. I'm not sure, sometimes we talk about balance when we talk about well-being. I'm not sure how realistic that is, but I think it's important to understand what are the components that I need in my life to bring well-being to me. And some of those will be, you know, if you imagined it as a circle, some of those will be a bigger chunk and some will be smaller, but that's about your priorities and what's important to you, and they may change over time. So yes, so family has always been a really important value of mine, and friends, and having a bit of an outlet outside of work, which I think comes back to that connectedness, and I probably will talk about that quite a bit today. And I think that's really key to our well-being and our community's well-being, is around connections and connectedness, and obviously family and being involved in sports like camp drafting are a way in which we can do that.
And so, Sel, how do you, like you mentioned a wheel, and that kind of visual of that wheel, and that some bits of the wheel you might be spending a bit more time or effort on parts of your well-being at one stage compared to other things that also are good for you, but you can't do everything. The wheel can't ever be round, can it?
That's
like it
right.
can never be round. How do you keep a track of how you're going? Do you use any tools or reflections, or what do you do?
More recently, and look, don't worry everyone, I haven't had, you know, big epiphanies in my life of, you know, even though I've had, you know, a health scare that, you know, should have got me into gear to, you know, really focus on my health. You do it for a while, and then you might drop off, and other things in life become important, and all of a sudden, you know, all of those great foods that you're going to eat has suddenly gone out the window. But I think that over time, or different circumstances, you know, you gather all of these experiences and information, and then it just comes to a stage whenever in your life where you sort of go, oh, okay, I'm okay with putting all of this together now. And I think a tool that I've found particularly useful that I've been using in more recent times has been journaling, and just sort of writing things down. And I've been lucky in my past with some of my work experience of learning about setting goals and making sure that your goals are smart. And I think that's really important, but doing some form of journaling really helps me to keep a bit of a focus. And I know you can jump online and find a lot of different templates that might help with that, but I actually have just even used at times just a really basic, just a pretty book from the newsagents, and made my own headings of what I just sort of needed to just sort of focus on at that time. And some of those headings might include, you know, food and exercise, whether that's recording it or planning it to try and make it happen. Maybe I might call them affirmations, but just those things. What do I need to tell myself to get through today? And I found these all particularly useful during COVID. And, you know, so what are those things I just need to tell myself today or for this week that are just going to help me to keep focused and get through or exceed or excel? And another heading I sort of like putting in my journaling, I might call it well-being, but it's just that sort of stuff that you might do to just take care of yourself, just look after yourself. And even to remind yourself to put your moisturiser on at night, you know, something simple as that, that's just something that you'd like to do for yourself to help you to feel good or to be your best. So it might be go for a ride on the horses or have dinner with friends. And I think journaling some of those things helps you to recognise that you've done it and it's contributing to your well-being. So I found that a really helpful tool.
So Sel, not only so it sounds like you set your intentions, and then you also do a bit of review and a little bit of I did. Yeah. And I think and just as part of that, those things, being really kind to yourself when you haven't ticked off all the things that might be in that journaling, and sort of understanding why you might not have got to it.
or was it really that important? Might not have been, might not matter, but you might have a go at doing it another day.
And so I had a question. Oh, right, yes. So I was really, my little brain lit up when you were talking about your affirmations and some of the or things that you want to tell yourself and focus on, particularly during COVID. What can you give us some examples of what they might be? Can you think of any?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I think sometimes, you know, when it's a bit tough, and certainly I suppose my experiences of working with rural communities during drought you know, has seen me work with some people in some really challenging circumstances, is sometimes just to let yourself know that you're going okay. And that might be an affirmation. You know, I'm doing well. I'm capable, and I'm confident, and I'm doing okay. And it could I don't know. When you think about sort of people that inspire you, I think sometimes you've got to look at inspiring yourself, and, you know, being your own bit of a cheerleader sometimes, and you know what, I'm doing okay. I've also been learning a little bit more recently around gratefulness, and some people would probably be familiar with a book that I've only just come across recently called The Magic. And so I've been...
The Magic.
Yeah. I'm not sure that I wrote the Rhonda, I will find on my notes in a minute. But that's been a good little tool for me to learn a little bit more about gratefulness. So even an affirmation of, you know, thinking about, you know, yourself as being a grateful person for no matter what those big or small things might be.
And so what's the effect that has on you of practicing gratitude, or by doing, I'm doing okay? How does that help your well-being? What does it do for you?
Well, I think because they're called affirmation, I think sometimes it is just affirming. Like, it just might be, you know, just giving yourself that confidence of where you're at, or I don't know, sometimes I think it's a bit of a balance between, you know, that saying of fake it till you make it, of maybe going, you know, oh, I'm going okay, and doing the best that you can, but then also not kidding yourself either, and recognizing that, you know, those points where, do you know what, I might be telling myself I'm going okay, but where are those points where, you know, I've got to be honest with myself, and it is tough, and I might just need a little bit more support than what I've, you know, been trying to do for myself lately. Yeah.
Awesome. And Louise, is there a question there?
Yes, a question around horses from Jane, asking Sally, is there a real honesty working with horses? You know, something that you feel when you're working with horses? And as you're saying, words are less important than intention, and they have enormous capacity for forgiveness. So what's that feeling that you have working with horses?
Yeah, it's such a wonderful feeling, and thank goodness they are in my life during COVID, when I was away from my family, and things were changing so much, because at least I had that opportunity, and I'm lucky enough to live where my horses are right here with me, to, you know, be able to just get on and have that space and have that freedom, and you know, clear my head of worries or thoughts, and enjoy that sort of feeling. But it is amazing with horses. They are so intuitive into how we feel, more so than ourselves sometimes. And I had a bit of a fight with trying to start a generator a couple of nights ago, and I knew it wasn't worth me trying to get on the horses with how I was feeling after that episode, because they just would have picked up on my crankiness, so which might not have made for the best ride. But yeah.
Does that then relate to, so Karen O'Keefe has said that my horses are my mirrors. What does that mean? Does that mean something to you?
Yeah, I think it is, in terms of, you know, and I agree, Karen, with what you're saying, is that you know, if I'm not doing so well, you know, my horses are so in tune with me that, you know, they'll pick up on, well, what's she worried about? Is this something I should be worried about? And yeah, so, or, you know, if you're sort of feeling good and confident, you can give them a lot of confidence as well. So, and that's a really tricky thing for me when it comes to competition, where deep down I'm trying not to be nervous about competing, and trying to instill a bit of confidence into my horses and myself that, you know, we've got this.
Isn't that so interesting? And that's the thing with our energy and our emotions, that they are infectious, and they're not just infectious to those beautiful animals around us, but they actually affect everyone around us. And there's some research that's been conducted about our heart energy and how it actually it's within about, I'm not sure if it's a meter of us, so we then influence people, others, with how we're showing up through our heart energy, which has been measured to be out in front of us. So yeah, it's just so interesting to think about how we manage ourselves. And so, you know, our well-being is super important, because if we're feeling good, then that helps everyone around us feel good as well.
And I think that probably leads to a point of something I wanted to talk about too, and that's also in terms of our environment that we're in as well, and certainly with working in NRM and water, you know, I have seen the impact that you know, the environment can have, and especially when our environment is dry and thirsty, and you know, it has a massive impact on us as individuals and our communities and the communities that we're a part of. And, you know, when we think about water in our landscapes, you know, it has such an impact, not only economically in terms of productivity, but socially. You know, during the drought here in the northern areas of northern New South Wales and southern Queensland, you know, people didn't have that social outlet. You know, they couldn't get together and go water skiing. They couldn't go down to the river and go fishing, you know, or have a barbecue on the river, because the river was dry in so many parts here in the north. And then spiritually and culturally as well, you know, our environment can have such a big impact on people's mental health and well-being, and especially Aboriginal communities here in the north too, who have such a strong connection to country, who, you know, when the river was dry, that was hurting them as well. I was talking to a school teacher out at Burke, who talked about that they try to take the kids down to because they obviously have a very high Aboriginal population, and try to take the kids down to the river for a lot of lessons. I don't know about you, but my experience normally of going to school was anytime we got out of the classroom, everyone played up a treat. It was never probably much fun for the teachers, but it's in fact the exact opposite out at Burke, where when they take the kids down to the river, the kids just love it, and their behaviour is better, because it's just I suppose they have that connection to that country, and it's a place where they're much more comfortable than sitting in a classroom. And, you know, our landscape and water is something that everyone, you know, has an interest in, and that's the same, you know, with the drought. The impacts on our community's well-being and individuals and families' well-being was terrible during that time. And so I suppose you see, you know, an energy across the landscape of you know, well-being being really impacted.
Oh, that's such a great conversation, Sel. And how are things up your way now? How's everything looking?
Yeah, it's actually really patchy. We've got some areas in central and western New South Wales that are pretty good. And again, with northern New South Wales and Queensland, it's really patchy. Here at Gundawindi, the dam at the back of my house is still dry. We've had only small amounts of rainfall since February. We've got our crops, our winter crops in, but they've had just enough rain to trickle along. So it'll be interesting to see how the yields come in. We don't have a lot of water at all in storage, which is making summer crop irrigation not looking very promising at all. But then we have some other areas out west where there was some good flows and rainfall, where things are looking a bit better. So yeah,
and so
patchy.
yeah,
still a long way to go for drought recovery though.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's been wet. You know, we've had better conditions down here, and you know, there's great. Oh, I think we do need a bit more rain at the moment. But yeah, it's just been that mental effect of all those years, and we can forget that Australia's a big country and there's still a lot of it in drought and still not travelling very well. So thanks for, you know, keeping our attention on that, and the bushfires as well. Like that kind of, I know a lot of women that I was talking to were a little bit, all the bushfires are getting the attention, but we're still really suffering up here with drought. And for those communities that have had a little bit of rain, what does that do for people? What does it, how do you see the change in people and the community when you do get a bit of rain?
Yeah, I've noticed it even here in the town in Gundawindi. There's been some jobs advertised. There's people moving back into town, so houses getting rented, houses are being bought and sold, which is fantastic. There is, even though we've been impacted by COVID restrictions, there is generally an uplift in the community, which can be felt and seen even when you go down the street in these rural communities, or just seeing you know, an economy starting to move and seeing the jobs advertised that weren't previously there. We lost a lot of people from our town during the drought, and it had a real impact, and people don't socialise, and again, getting back to that connection, it's just so important that during those times of drought, a lot of people do really lose that sort of connectedness, which is when they need it most, and that happens for lots of reasons. Either, you know, off-farm incomes taking up a lot of time, more work on the farms taking up a lot of time, resources aren't as available, a number of events aren't, you know, being conducted. So yeah, so it it is interesting to see that. Yeah, that's where just that connection is so important, and it was really interesting during the drought. A lot of people up here were really faced with the grips of drought, but then we saw those fish deaths that occurred at Menindee, and a lot of media and social media were putting a lot of blame on northern water users, and that had a massive impact on people's well-being, where they'd already been suffering from drought, but then feeling like communities were sort of pointing the finger at them, and people were sort of taking that on personally. And so that was a really challenging time for a lot of communities here as well. So, and I think in the bush, you know, loneliness is such an issue that contributes to a decline in well-being, and it's it's a really, really big issue, and therefore, you know, I think that's why I talk about connectedness and not a lot as a way to try and overcome the huge impacts of loneliness for people in rural areas.
So that's really interesting, Sal, because when we've been talking about you know, during our COVID time of we Victorians, the social lepers, being in isolation, and then we've been talking to women all over Australia, and they're like, you know, this is just how we live, you know, where we are more isolated, and this is just how we roll. So but I'm interested, so we've kind of, I guess we've sort of heard the, you know, the upside of that, like we're resilient because we're used to being, you know, resourceful. And we did hear how Tiani had been on Australia's most remote cattle station for decades, and she moved into Alice Springs and she felt super lonely because she was very connected. Even though they were isolated, they were connected, and it was fascinating to hear that. But I'd just like to come back to this. So there is a dark side to the isolation that I guess we maybe haven't discussed in our series so far, Louise, would you say?
Yes. I've got my hands full trying to press the button.
Thank you, Louise.
I think I think loneliness is being felt right across Australia even before COVID, and I suppose that thing is that you can be in a room full of people and still feel a real sense of loneliness, and it's so therefore it's about that connection. So you could be in a really remote location but still be really quite connected, and I think it's but that's about making an effort to deal with that, and that can be really difficult for some people. Some people just don't have the personality type to pick up the phone and say, hey, can I come round for a cuppa? Or they may not have children at the local school, or they may not have the confidence that they've got the skills to be on the local hall committee. So unless you sort of make the effort to put your hand up for things, sometimes those opportunities for connectedness are really, really difficult for people. And if you overlay that with the difficulty of, we can't hear you, Cindy.
Oops. Oh, I read that.
And I think, as I was saying, with that loneliness and connectedness, if you overlay that with the difficulties around geography and being a long way out of town and having to travel, or your internet services are so bad that you just can't even participate in a Zoom meeting, or you're a young, fella out on a farm and you can't even access Facebook or Instagram to connect with your mates. They're the sort of challenges that people need, try to overcome, which are really difficult for some people.
So Sal, what do you do? How do you connect?
Well, interestingly, I've actually found the COVID period, and I know it's been really, really difficult. There's some connections that I've lost in terms of that, physical connection to catch up with my family in Victoria. But in some ways, I've actually been able to connect more with community and friends that I had before, where my job, I was traveling a lot for work, and I'd be traveling. And so during this time where, I haven't been traveling for work, I can have a couple with the neighbours, or go horse riding with the kids down the road, and, or enjoy having dinner at a friend's house to watch Farmer Wants a Wife. Like, it's been, so that's been really good for me, because otherwise, I'd either be on the road or tired and trying to catch up at home from traveling and meetings and work. So that's been really interesting, and I suppose a bit of a learning I'm trying to take on board when it comes to that sort of well-being of where our priorities are, and when we're sort of spending our time and what we need to do for ourselves to sort of be our best. So, but, and sometimes it's not easy, but, and sometimes you've just got to make it happen. And you know that you're going to feel better for it. There are some days, I understand, you don't feel like going out for dinner, or you just want a quiet night, but sometimes just making the effort to do it, you'll feel better for it later on. And there's other opportunities that sort of come about, so I've become a bit more of a fan of just say yes, just go. When Synth rings you and asks you to do a webinar, say yes, figure it out later, and connections come from that. And I'm getting to connect with all of you today, which is just so lovely. Yeah, and means a lot. Thank you.
And so Jane's got a little question. Do you think we'll be able to maintain the reduced travel benefits of COVID?
Yeah. I'm not sure where that'll go. Where that will end up.
So what about your work with WinCot, so the women in cotton?
Yeah.
What were some of the issues that they were facing, and was well-being and kind of that sort of thing? How did that play out in the WinCot group?
Yeah, we did a little bit of work. We had some great funding from the Cotton Research Development Corporation to look at the role that women play in the industry, and we thought if we can better understand the role that women play, we might be in a better position to help service and support those women, because obviously the role of women in agriculture and the role of women in various industries has changed a lot over the years. You know, gone are the days where, you know, the main role was cooking for the men for harvest. That still very much continues, but there's all these other roles that women are playing as well. So we wanted to get a better handle on that. And I don't have all of the figures with me, but just some information from the last census. It was identified that 1 in 4 cotton farmers identified as female, and that women make up 60% of the workforce in key cotton industry organisations. But in saying that, you know, agriculture is a long way from closing its gender equity gap. So even though, you know, we're saying women make up 60% of the workforce, you know, what are they getting paid, and what roles are they playing? How many boards are they on? And I know in cotton it's pretty good, but also with the census data of 1 in 4 cotton farmers identified as female, you know, that could possibly be higher. But we've got women out there that, you know, our research, our project identified it, you know, the women that are out there who say, you know, I'm just the farmer's wife, I'm just the manager's wife, who don't identify. And again, it gets back to connection, you know, how connected do they feel to their industry, or what their role is as part of the industry, and the importance of their role in the industry. So we found that a lot of women are playing a number of different roles on farm, particularly. Some of them are taking on roles that they don't necessarily have the capacity for or the confidence in, but there's no one else to do it, and they seem to be lumped with it. And I think that causes, you know, some stress, and that some of the girls that, you know, take on the bookkeeping or the finances or the work health and safety management and all of those types of roles that someone needs to do. And unfortunately, often it seems to be the girls in the business who may not have had any training or experience in it. So, that sometimes that's the sort of work and the roles that there isn't always a lot of support for or connected. You can't always get that information from, you know, going to a field day, for example, to sort of connect with that. But WinCot really played a role, and a lot of those other women ag groups and organisations do help to support and provide a role for those women to connect with their industry or other women in the industry that they're involved in. So yeah, they're really important, but certainly understanding that there's some of those stresses that would impact on wellbeing, along with that, the other things that I've talked about in terms of sort of loneliness and geographical isolation and difficulties with technology. I mean, you know, an example of that, and you know, when we talked about well-being and things, I thought about well-being, and you know, some of that might be growth and learning and education. You know, there's women out of Gundawindi who have such poor connectivity issues that they come into the library to get the internet to be able to undertake studies. They can't even access enough bandwidth to undertake studies at home, and need to come into town and do that in their groceries. So they're the sort of challenges that would impact on wellbeing.
And Sel, how do you know yourself when you're not traveling so well in your wellbeing? What are the signs for you, and how do you get yourself back on track?
Excuse me. A few years ago, I actually was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And so when I'm not going so well, that will be, and I know that lots of other people out there with autoimmune diseases who would be able to relate that, you know, if you're not eating as well as you might have been, or not getting the rest that you need to be, that's sort of going to be a pretty major sign when you start getting a little unwell, or your symptoms start flaring up, that, you know, it's really, you know, you need to do something to look after yourself, to keep yourself well is probably one of the major things. But in terms of more simpler signs, I think I've found since doing the journaling, I'm able to pick up on those little things a little bit more easily. Yeah.
And so it was really interesting before hearing you say that, like many of us, the wellbeing journey's kind of up and down, and you go well for a little while and then it sort of goes out the window a bit, and it's then it sounds like for you it's just kind of all clicked or something. Can you tell us a bit more about that? Was there a
Yeah, I
moment
think it
or
was,
what?
yeah, I think it was the start of COVID where
Right.
my life just changed so much. But I also had a moment of thinking, do you know what? I probably haven't been going so well, and I probably was more unhappy than what I'd realised. But I think when you're busy, you're able to mask it, and you just keep busy. And I'll just keep busy, and I'll just do this, and I'll just do that, and I'll go here, and I'll go there. And but when you stop, and you probably have that opportunity to sort of look at yourself a little bit and go, do you know what? I don't think I am going so well, and this is a really good opportunity to be your best. So let's go. Let's do it.
Good on you. That is so good.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I quickly wanted to touch on as well was just what it's been like to be in a border community in this time of COVID, and how
Yeah.
people have been dealing with that from a community sense.
Yeah. So Gundawindi is a border town between New South Wales and Queensland, and our border has been closed since about the middle of March, when COVID started, and we've had varying degrees of the restrictions. So our restrictions just tightened up again recently, where no one from New South Wales or Victoria or ACT were allowed to come through the border, and we now have a border bubble in place, which I know there's one down in New South Wales and Victoria as well. Up until just on the weekend, there was a lot of angst in our community, where agriculture wasn't considered essential services. So being able to conduct harvest was going to be really concerning, and people really concerned about their income and their potential to work. So that has now just changed. There's also been really great concerns from a lot of people who were in New South Wales and had children at boarding school in Queensland and couldn't get to their kids or couldn't get to health services. So some of that has improved, but like with everywhere, everyone, you hear those stories of people that are more impacted than you, or are affected in this way. And it's just been such a roller coaster, hasn't it? Where I just feel like, at the start we had this big slump, and then we got through that and got a little bit better, and then it was going up and down on the way up, and then we've had another bit of a dip, and so it just really feels like sort of riding a bit of a roller coaster. But I think the important bit is that we just all ride it together, and keep connected, keep supporting each other, and just ride it all as best we can.
Oh, Sally, so wise. So wise. I love it.
Thanks,
now,
Sid.
just before I hand over to Louise for questions, comments, if you could just tell, we ask every person who comes on just for their top 3 wellbeing tips. So love to hear yours.
Yeah, sure. As you might have all picked up, probably the first one is around connections. I've read a really good book. I don't know if anyone's interested in reading it, but I particularly loved it and resonated with a lot of it. It's called Lost Connections by Johann Hari. It's a fabulous book. If anyone gets the chance to have a bit of a flick through that, it's a pretty easy read, but really interesting. Looks like Sim might even have it.
You must have it.
Oh, fantastic.
Oh.
Yeah. Thanks, Synth. What did you think of it, Synth?
It's one of the many books I've got and haven't read yet.
Oh.
Got a whole bookshelf of them.
Well, I'd bring it to the top of the pile, especially at the moment when and you're down there in Victoria being so impacted by COVID. I would put Lost Connections to the top of your book list and start flicking through that, because I think connections are just crucial to our well-being personally, the communities that we're a part of. It's about how we connect, with ourselves, our relationships, our environment, our activities, so connections, and thinking about connections, not just so much about those sort of personal relationships, but connection to, you know, all of those things that we're a part of, I think is really important to managing our well-being, and making health a priority, I think, is really important, no matter what that is that you need to do for yourself to just make health really important, whether it's just to remind yourself to drink water for the day, or, you know, you want to lose those extra couple of kilos, or you just want to make sure you go for a walk. Yeah, just making health important. And the last one is journaling, which I've already mentioned, and just making it work for you, whether that is finding a template, or just making your own headings, whatever sort of paper, whatever sort of format you want to do it in, just writing some things down that you want to work towards that will help keep you on track and help you to think about what you need to do or what you'd like to do to be your best. And whether that is, you know, ringing a friend, or going somewhere, or, you know, thinking about, you know, what you might need to do that day or that week for your health. Yeah, I think they're my three, Sim.
Beautiful, Sal. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. Oh, thank God. Okay. Right. Louise and participants, it's over to you.
Well, we don't have any questions, and I have asked for them. While we wait, there was a question back earlier from Jane for you, Cynthia, about the heart, where you talked about, you know, the heart.
The heart energy over Zoom.
Yes.
Well, I would think that no, but I certainly do think that your energy is, again, that does come across on Zoom. So again, I think how you choose to show up is really important, whether it is virtual or whether it is because again, like, I hope we can lift people, like seeing Sal's beautiful smiling face, that just, and her gorgeous smiles all throughout the presentation, that just gives me a lift. That just makes me feel better. So again, we have so much influence over everybody else by how we choose to, like I said, choose to show up.
Exactly. I think it's intensified actually through Zoom. I really do, because we don't have as many distractions, and our radar picks it up more. Okay, so Susie's asking you, Sally, do you journal every day? And is it do you journal gratitude? So
yeah, thanks for the question, Sus. I do journal most days, but sometimes I just give myself the weekends off. So like with some other things. So I would say most days I do, but then sometimes I just, you know, just have a break from things.
In the morning, Sal, or in the evening? Do you have a set time that you usually do it?
Yeah, in the mornings, yeah, having a cup of tea and just setting my day up and just thinking about, okay, what am I going to do today? What do I need to think about? But then sometimes my journaling is a little bit reflective, or I might not know, because I've been trying to watch what I'm eating lately. Unless I've planned it, I might just go back in retrospect and write down exactly what I did have, because I didn't plan on the 5 brownies, Louise, I end up having. So yeah, so I just, you know, I just think there's no rules with it, and just try and just give it a go and get it to work for you in the best way that it can. And in terms of gratitude, well, I have been reading that book, The Magic, and it works through chapters and gets you to, you know, look at what you're grateful for the day. Now, I'm almost finished that book. And again, I do that in the morning, you know, when I do my journaling, you know, just think about, you know, what I'm grateful for. And but when I finish a book, I think it is something that I'll just incorporate into my journaling, and, you know, whether it's affirmations gratefulness. So I'll figure that out as I go, I think. Oh, and tell us about your dog. Oh, my little Ruby Rose.
I was about to ask, does the dog appear in the journal? Do you journal the dog?
Every day, well-being is just having Ruby Rose in my life. So she's beautiful, and she deserves recognition today, being National Dog Day.
Oh,
and I'm just so proud of her for not barking over the last hour.
It's an extra treat.
Good outside.
Sal, how long have you had her for?
Not very long. She's only about 4 months old. So yeah, she, like everyone else who got a puppy during COVID.
Dog.
And she's a little stumpy-tailed red cattle dog. So we're working on at the moment, not jumping up and not biting. So that's a work in progress. Yeah. Thanks, Susie.
Right. So
good one, Susie.
Okay, so I haven't read this prior, but here's a question from Nicole.
I think that was to you, Louise. I think that was actually to you.
Oh, okay. I'd said earlier that, yeah, my husband's in New Zealand, not Sally's. Unless it's yours, Sally, have you got a husband? And are they? No. My hubby has actually got a date to come back. So he went over, I think, 9 weeks ago. So we've been fatherless, and my father-in-law was very unwell and at 92 deteriorated very quickly. So Malcolm jumped on a plane and was able to get, our federal member of Parliament was able to get him on a plane very quickly. Isolated for 2 weeks in Auckland, got down to South Island, Ashburton, where the family is, and he did die within the week. Hasn't been able to come back. So we have a flight, and we'll see him in 4 weeks now. So, but we're doing totally fine, totally fine. So thank you.
Your kids are a little older, Louise, too.
Yeah. So I've got a stepdaughter in New Zealand. She's 27, so she's looking after Malcolm, which is great. And Jennifer and Patrick are in their teens, but this COVID Mark II, Jennifer, who's 13 and a half, she's very, very clingy. So she's missing her dad. And first time every day I'm having to do some of the school work with her. So she's an A+ student, very academic. So that's where we're noticing it.
Yeah, it's I just was talking to a friend earlier who just actually went, I'm so over homeschooling and I just can't have any time to myself, and they're all over me, and it's really tough, isn't it? Really, really tough.
Yeah, it's the interruptions. It is the interruptions. That's what affects me the most.
Sal, so this is maybe too personal. Please tell me if I'm going inappropriate. I'm fascinated as a woman without children. You don't have children, Sal?
No.
So, and for a long time that impacted on my well-being and sense of, I don't know, value, and I'll just talk about my issues here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just kind of, so I'm, a lot of people obviously talk about their children as and their families, and you've spoken about your family, which is, so I just wondered, have you got any comments on, like, it's from a, what am I trying to say, a woman without children? Has that played out?
No, not that I can think of, Sin. Oh, no, we've lost you again.
Talk to us.
But I can appreciate what you're saying. I do appreciate what you're saying. And I think not having that connection to my kids, my nieces and nephews in Victoria, has been really felt, especially going through times like Easter. I did have a Zoom birthday party with 2 of my youngest nieces and nephews whose birthdays are very close together. So we did that because obviously they're in Victoria in lockdown, to just try and make that a little bit a little bit more fun. But yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, so
I think that connection thing too, Cindy, sorry, you know, I'm very close, you know, with a number of my friends' kids and even, you know, the neighbours' kids and going riding. So I still have lots of children in my life, which is really important to me, really important. And obviously, you know, COVID impacted that a little bit, but I just borrowed the neighbours' kids and took them riding.
Yeah, no, I noticed before you said going riding with the kids in the street. So yeah, and that's so you're playing a really important role as like aunt and you know, just available adult to be another figure in kids' lives.
I think so, Sin. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thanks for that, Sel. Now, does anyone else have any questions just before we finish up today? I can hear my little cat is meowing at the door, waiting to be let in. No more questions. Well, no. we might officially finish there. And I just wanted to say thanks so much to Sel for joining us today and again bringing it yet again a new element to our wellbeing conversation with talking about journaling and affirmations and also about the importance of community wellbeing and the natural environment. I think that's been a really important discussion to have that we haven't had yet. Next week, we're talking to Belle Baker, who's been one of our regulars on regular participants, a frequent flyer as we like to call them, and Belle's from South Australia, which is great because I don't think we've had a South Australian yet on our sessions, our 4 episodes. So we hope you can join us next week. And just a little advertisement too from me. You probably will have received a newsletter from me advertising my wellbeing vacation workshop. So it's 2.5 hours online. You get to hang around with a group of awesome women. I dress up in a blonde wig and kind of try to be a little bit of an air hostess online. But it's basically just giving you some strategies and tools to have some thinking time about your own well-being and also the opportunity to connect and have conversations with other women. So we break people into groups and pairs and stuff. So yeah, that's happening on, I don't know the date, Friday in a couple of weeks for Women's Health Week. Can't remember.
Oh, Health Week's following week.
The following week. But yeah, you'll all get a little newsletter that will tell you a bit more about that. And I'd just love to have a few of our Wellbeing Wednesday crew as part of that. It'd be really good to have some women from around Australia. Some of us can't go on our normal vacation or as far away as we'd like. No Europe, no, not that I've been to Europe since 1997, but anyway. So some of us are pining for a bit of a break. So come and have a wellbeing vacation with me. So we'll end that there. I shall press thanks everyone. Stop recording.